A certain storefront sits on your route, a building you pass 100 times. Maybe the place handles heating and cooling, fixes cars, or prints documents behind a hand-lettered sign. You keep walking past the doors. The owner remains a total stranger, someone you couldn't name for a paycheck. One morning, a piece of paper shows up taped inside the front glass. Thick black marker covers the back of an old invoice. The note says they are closing after 34 years and thanks the neighborhood for everything. You feel a small flicker of pity as you drive by. The company failed, the economy crushed them, and times got too hard. You miss the mark with that assumption. The man taping up that notice goes by Benny. He is 67 years old. Two vans sit in the parking lot with zero debt. The business thrived the whole time. Yearly profits clear enough cash to match a $2.8 million investment portfolio. He skipped the sale and walked away. Benny flipped the switch and locked the doors. More than 9 out of 10 similar operations closed down the same way this year. You sit there wondering who inherits the spoils while these shops go dark. But that question is the wrong one, and the answer will cost you years if you keep waiting for it. I go by Nick. I spend an unreasonable amount of my life reading estate data and small business filings. The job lacks any real glamour. You hear constant talk about a great wealth transfer making your generation rich. You suspect the money will bypass you and leave you behind. That suspicion is correct, but you're missing the bigger picture. You're overlooking a blind spot worth considerably more than any inheritance. The headline number is staggering. Cerulli Associates projects roughly $124 trillion will change hands between now and 2048. You and your fellow heirs receive about $105 trillion of that total. 18 trillion goes to charity. The remaining trillion is scattered across other bequests and institutional recipients. The boomer generation and the one above it account for 81% of the money. A sum that large ought to arrive at your front door with a parade permit and a marching band. The boomer generation currently sits on $93 trillion in assets. The whole American economy generated roughly $28 trillion in output last year. One demographic controls more than 3 times the annual output of everyone you know. That older group makes up 20% of adults but claims 51.6% of household wealth. Your age bracket, assuming you are under 40, controls 6.6%. Back in 1989, the under 40 crowd held 12%. The researchers at Cerulli are serious, and the cash is real. The headline numbers represent real wealth. You face the main obstacle once that money starts moving toward your generation. His economics team published a blunt breakdown of this transfer in July 2024. The analysts took that $93 trillion figure and stripped away the pieces the original report usually leaves out. First, you deduct their debt. Then you remove the top 1%, since their wealth never reaches you or anyone in your circle. That money disappears into foundations, trusts, and legal structures labeled irrevocable. The $93 trillion drops to $60. Retirement spending comes next. Staying alive costs money, and that generation pays the bill. The $60 trillion shrinks to $44. You lose another chunk to taxes, administrative fees, and donations to religious institutions. You walk away with $36 trillion. Visa calculates that a mere $8 trillion of that remaining pile goes toward goods and services. The rest shifts from an older brokerage account into a slightly younger one, and none of those accounts belong to you. Divide that $8 trillion across 2 decades of consumer purchases. That injection pushes annual economic growth from 2% up to 2.1%. That single tenth of a percentage point is the entire impact this historic transfer has on the economy you navigate every day. Cancel the marching band. Macro trends cover the whole country. You live in your own household at 41 or 53 or 29, your parents own a house. For a decade, you do what most people do and move a number around in the back of your head. The house sits there. Maybe a retirement account exists. The math works out. You never say that figure out loud. The subject stays quiet among friends. Benny has kids. His children have no idea where they land on this spectrum. National records show 30% of American households ever see an inheritance over a lifetime. 7 out of 10 people get nothing at any point. Making it into that 30% shifts the timeline. The median age to receive the cash is 58, not 25. At 58, you see retirement from your own porch. Headlines push a different story about the payout. Serious analysts calculate the typical inheriting household stands to gain $515,000, but averages distort reality the same way the average human has fewer than 2 legs. A handful of enormous estates drag the mean upward while most people cluster far below it. Running the median numbers changes the picture entirely. The median payout lands at $69,000. The top 1% averages $719,000. The bottom half of recipients scrapes together $9,700. $44 trillion will pass to heirs. Households in the 90th to 99th percentile claim $34 trillion of that total, taking 77%. The bottom half of the country splits $500 billion. $1% of the total wealth transfer goes to half the population. 75% of people receiving an inheritance already sit in the top 10% of net worth. The odds place you outside that group. A lottery implies a random draw. This wealth transfer operates as a hereditary system with a great public relations team. You might say, fine, Nick, but my family owns a house outright, so I'm safe. A few harsh realities stand between you and that deed. Long-term care drains accounts fast. According to the Genworth Cost of Care Survey, a private nursing home room costs a national median of $355 a day. That pulls $129,000 a year from the nest egg you picture in your head. A semi-private room takes $115,000. Assisted living takes $74,400. Medicare refuses to pay for long-term custodial care. Medicaid only steps in after the bank accounts hit zero. Think about Benny. He owns a house, a pair of vans he finished paying off, and a savings balance he kept secret from his kids. The property you expect to inherit already has a second bidder in line. That bidder is a care facility with a hummingbird feeder by the glass and a very patient billing department. Unpaid mortgages complicate the picture of a free and clear home. Federal Reserve data shows 41% of homeowners aged 65 to 79 still make mortgage payments today. Back in 1989, only 24% did. For homeowners 80 and older, 31% carry a mortgage now compared to just 3% decades ago. The older relative you rely on holds a piece of more than $4 trillion in total boomer household debt. A lack of paperwork creates another mess. 39% of boomers lack a will. 61% of Gen X lacks one too. A probate judge and estranged siblings who last spoke at a 2009 wedding end up dividing your inheritance. The timeline creates its own frustration. Cerulli projects $54 trillion transfers sideways from spouse to spouse first. Because women outlive men by roughly 5 to 6 years on average, and the unlimited marital deduction shields that first transfer from estate tax, almost $40 trillion lands with widowed women before a single dollar trickles down to the next generation. 2 names on the deed means your waiting period has not even begun. A 29-year-old running this inheritance math should expect the final payout around their 60th birthday. You already see the pattern. A recent consumer survey found the share of Americans anticipating an inheritance dropped from 25% to 20%. That quiet correction tells the whole story. The check you imagined never arrives. But here is where the story most people tell you ends, and where the actual story begins. The wealthiest generation in history is exiting, and they leave behind more than just assets. They vacate their positions. They stop working. They stop running the businesses where you shop. They stop holding the deeds to the buildings you drive past. A vacant job does not care about your family tree. Take Desmond. At 29, he spent 6 years working for Benny out of a pair of paid-off vans. Anyone under 35 watching this shares his reality. Over the last 2 years, he saw his paycheck grow without switching jobs, without negotiating, without doing anything except continuing to show up. That kind of raise would have seemed like science fiction to his older brother at that age, and likely to yours too. The Bureau of Labor Statistics released its occupational employment and wage statistics this past May, showing mean annual pay for electricians jumping from $62,000 to over $71,000. Plumbers saw their average go from $63,000 to past $72,000. Those are $9,000 raises in a single year. Anyone working with their hands claims that same figure. Demographics drive this story, and you are standing in the middle of it. Demographers call 2025 peak 65. A record 4.18 million Americans hit that age. That breaks down to 11,400 people a day. An entire mid-sized town clocks out permanently every morning before your coffee gets cold. Each one of those retirees used to compete against you for opportunities. Retirement currently pulls 48.6 million people out of the labor force. Employers watch 1.7 million people leave every year, forcing them to hire 142,000 new workers a month just to maintain their current headcount. Those companies need you more than you need them, and the owners already realize it. The job growth celebrated on the news involved the economy running up a down escalator. The data takes a strange turn next. Stephen Ruggles, the demographer at the University of Minnesota, who built the largest population database in the world, expects the labor force to shrink by 2.7 million workers between 2030 and 2040. More workers will leave the market than enter it for the first time in the history of the country. His take on your future is blunt. Fewer competitors pushing against you for work drives up wages, improves your bargaining power, and narrows inequality for the small group entering the workforce. He calls this an outstanding economic opportunity. Nobody handed Desmond anything. The math started bidding for him, and it is about to start bidding for you. The Associated General Contractors of America reported a shortfall of 439,000 construction workers while all this happened. That sign in the window pulls you back in. The labor shortage covers the small side of the story. The other half dwarfs it. Around 6 million American small and medium businesses will change hands by 2035 as owners retire. More than 1 million make viable candidates for sale, carrying a combined value of up to $5 trillion. The McKinsey Institute for Economic Mobility published those numbers this February. A few shops sit within driving distance of your house. Your last takeout meal came from one. More than half of all small business owners in this country are over 55 today. 1 in 4 are past 65. The average American small business needs a knee replacement long before it sees a Series A round. Annual exits could reach 665,000 a year by 2035. This transition is happening on your street right now. One number stays stuck in my head. 92% of small business exits in America happen through closure. Sales account for 5%. Transfers take up the remaining 3%. We built an economy where owners shut down several 100,000 profitable businesses a year rather than fill out the paperwork to hand one over. These owners close their doors without ever failing. Your neighbors shop at these places. Contracts sit on file. Vans in the lot stay switched off because the owner turned 67 and a buyer never showed up. Project Equity counts about 2.9 million of these shops. Owners over 55 run them and employ 32 million people. Half of those owners lack any succession plan. You bought something from one of them this month. Desmond had no idea any of this was possible. Nobody hands the guy in the van a copy of the McKinsey report. But you spot a reachable wealth transfer when you see a handwritten note taped inside a window. Benny laid his numbers out on the table. A median American small business changing hands goes for $350,000. That price tag sits below a starter home in the metros you want to live in. Median cash flow covers everything one working owner pulls out, hitting $165,000 a year. Buyers pay just over 2 times that figure. An SBA 7A loan will finance up to about 90% of the purchase. Your equity injection on a $350,000 deal drops to $35,000. Current rules let up to half of that down payment come from a seller note on standby. 90% financing remains a phrase your bank refuses to utter regarding a house. $35,000 of your cash goes down. You borrow $315,000 at 10.5% over a decade. The monthly payment lands around $4,250. $50 $1,000 a year in debt service costs less than the mortgage on that unaffordable house. Subtracting that debt service from the $165,000 in cash flow leaves $114,000 annually. Pulling that same $114,000 from an index fund at a 4% withdrawal rate requires $2.8 million in savings. At the median American savings rate, you will finish accumulating that pile shortly after your funeral. Those figures made up Benny's number. That value sat behind the door you drove past. Nobody inherited the shop. No child took it over. No buyer stepped in. The operation stopped existing on a Friday afternoon while you sat at work. The last set of keys carried the value out the door. That reality defines what 92% looks like from the inside. Now, before you open a new browser tab and start searching for laundromats, hear the fine print. The one nobody puts in the highlight reel. SBA loans require a personal guarantee from anyone holding a 20% stake or higher. If the operating cash runs dry, the bank comes after your house. That 92% closure rate exists for a reason, and a large portion of it traces back to the person running the show. Take a guy like Benny out of the equation, and all you hold are 2 vans plus a client roster that starts dialing a competitor inside 6 weeks. You sign up for a regular job strapped to a mountain of debt. Financial leverage amplifies the wins and magnifies the losses. If Desmond ever decides to buy a business, he needs to stack 6 full months of payroll and operating cash in the bank before he even looks at a contract. I am not telling you to skip this path. I am telling you to walk it with your eyes open and a cash reserve in your pocket. The labor shortage narrative needs the same clear eyes. Ruggles mapped out a demographic forecast for the next decade, but shifts in immigration policy or new automation tools could rewrite the whole timeline. Plenty of older workers are already unretiring. By the time 2030 rolls around, nearly 9.5% of all workers will be 65 or older. They refuse to exit the workforce on the traditional schedule. Real estate always comes up next. Freddie Mac asked 3,000 boomers about their plans, and 2/3 of the movers intended to downsize. A separate realtor poll covering 170,000 buyers showed people purchasing larger properties instead. Both datasets exist in the real world, yet neither solves your personal problem. Zillow offers the critical warning you need to heed. A large wave of boomer houses hitting the market will land in Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Buffalo, Detroit, and New Orleans. Those cities already feature affordable real estate. The expensive metros where you want to live will miss this flood of inventory. You can cross a bargain property in Denver off your list. But one wealth transfer channel is already functioning right now, and it hides in the quietest corner of the data. 2/3 of older parents prefer to spend their cash or watch their kids spend it while they are still alive to see it. Only a third want to lock those funds away for an estate. Your chances of getting financial help are much higher while your parents are breathing than waiting on a will. The numbers prove it. 1 in 4 millennial homeowners receive down payment assistance from family. 26% admit they never would have closed on their house without that cash. This money moves across a kitchen table while everyone is still in the room. The funds reach you at 32 instead of 58. Having that direct conversation with your family, the awkward one, the one you keep dodging, holds far more value than waiting on a legal document read aloud by a stranger in a conference room. 26 years separate those two timelines. 26 years of compound growth, of equity building, of showing up to your own life instead of waiting for permission. That conversation is the single most actionable step in this entire script, and you already know who you need to call. The story you bought into involves a giant wave of cash rolling in, and your single job is to stand in place and catch it. That pitch is pure fiction. It hurts you by keeping your feet glued to one spot. A different reality sits below the surface, and it works out better for you. The wealthiest generation in history is doing more than passing down bank accounts. They are leaving behind open positions. The labor market proves this point. A shortage of workers pushes your paycheck higher than any negotiation you could pull off. Business ownership follows the same pattern. Hundreds of thousands of profitable shops shut their doors because the owners never asked the one person qualified to take over. Desmond spent 6 years riding in the passenger seat of the work van the whole time. He knows every client by name. He knows which vans need brake work and which invoices are late. He is the most logical buyer for that business, and nobody ever told him. The kitchen table holds the final piece. You keep dodging that conversation. Stepping up gives you a 26-year head start on waiting for a future payout. Pulling this off has nothing to do with your bloodline. The sole requirement is paying attention at the right moment. I lack a financial advisory license, and none of this counts as professional guidance. Taking over a company, signing for a loan, or switching your career path all carry real downside. Those decisions demand more research than a single video from someone who reads estate filings as a hobby. Go talk to professionals who lose their own money when they steer you off course. An SBA-approved lender, a small business attorney, a fee-only financial planner. People with skin in the game. One final thought should stick in your head. Your main question misses the point. The size of your future inheritance is the wrong thing to calculate. The real calculation starts with a 20-mile radius around your current location. You need to identify the local operations about to close their doors and figure out if anyone plans to show up when the lights go out. Benny took his sign down after a month. The work vans sold off one at a time. The customer list evaporated. Desmond went back to answering job listings. You could have stepped through the door. No parade, no inheritance windfall, just a set of doors about to open for whoever walks through them. If this changed how you see the buildings on your street, subscribe to the channel and hit the like button.